Some inscribed angles practice for us in this video. Inscribed angles has been one topic that we've needed to have a review video on, so here we go. The first idea, that we want to understand is just this simple relationship, okay? We're not going to talk about why this is true at this point. We're just going to understand the pattern that we're trying to see, and then we'll talk about what's going on here, all right? The first thing we want to understand is how to name this arc, okay? And in a separate video on circles and arcs, if you haven't seen that yet, you should watch that one. It's only about 9 minutes long, something like that, okay? And we study arcs. For instance, we're talking about arc BC. I just wrote it in blue, but I think I'm going to change that to red because I just highlighted it in red. So if you guys can see, I'm talking about arc BC, this one that I just highlighted in red. All right. Now, what I want to try to figure out is the measure of that arc, okay? And when I'm trying to find the measure of an arc, we end up, needing to know what we're looking for, okay? And in the case of an inscribed angle problem, we want to find what angle intercepts that arc. That'll be the helpful thing here, okay? But there's actually so many different ways to solve these problems. They're not always the same. So in this problem, we would want to first of all observe that our angle that I just put in blue intercepts the arc BC, okay? And we say that because it intercepts at the point C, right? This angle touches at C and B. That's where it intersects the circles. So we would say that this angle BAC, all right, this angle intercepts arc BC, okay? And the theorem that we have in this case is this relationship, okay? That the measure of an arc is equal to double the measure of the angle that intercepts it. And in this case, that's the angle BAC, okay? So we know the measure of angle BAC though. So that means that we can substitute that in here, okay? So double the measure of angle BAC. Well, what's the measure of angle BAC? Well, the measure of angle BAC is 100. So I have to do 2 times 100. And 2 times 100 is 200. So we have the measure of arc BC as 200, okay? So more often than not, a student that knows what they're doing is going to look at the paper. They're going to darken the line. So first they look at this inside angle. They go here to C, they go there to B, and then say, okay, that angle intercepts this arc, so they would say outside must be double, and they would put 2 times 100 on the outside, and they would know that that has to be 200. So again, this pattern is something that we want to learn. So I'm going to try to speed this up a little bit. I feel like I try to do a more mathematical way, more technical. All right, now let's learn the pattern. So we take a look at number 2. Again, we want to always keep sight of what we're doing. I always feel like if I go too fast, you might be able to get the right answer but have no idea what's going on still. So this arc is intercepted by this angle at 68 degrees. We can see that this angle touches at L and it touches at M, okay? So that tells me that the measure of this arc NM, okay, is going to be equal to 2 times the measure of this angle, which is 68, okay? Because that is an inscribed angle. Again, the main reason, I should have mentioned on the last point, the main reason why we could do this is because point L is on the circle. So not only is point L on the circle, but the angle intercepts the arc. So 2 times 68 gives us 136. And the measure of arc NM is then equal to 136, okay? So this brings me to kind of the mantra that I give my students to do at this point, okay? I say inside is half, outside is double. All right, and if you keep repeating those things, I tell my students that eventually you'll make it to the end of the problem. So in this case right here, we see that this problem is a little different, okay, and that there's something else missing, that it's not so simple as just the inside is half. So I will write these things down, okay? So like I said, inside is, outside is, all right, the whole circle is, and the half circle is. All right. These are all things that are kind of common sense, okay? They're things that you should have memorized, at least the bottom two are things you should have memorized without really having to memorize because we use them so much, all right? 360 and 180, okay? You should know a whole circle 360 by now, and the half a circle 180 is something that you should know, all right? These two things are new though, all right? The idea that inside is half and outside is double, okay? This is me really oversimplifying the whole idea, but also trying to give you guys some kind of way to remember what you're supposed to do, okay, to keep you focused. So, because we know inside is half, let's talk about how I would use the first thing in the list here. Well, I want to try to get an inside number. By inside number, I think I want to try to get an angle that's on the inside of the circle. And the way you get an inside number, right, is by taking half of the arc that it intercepts. So I can see this red angle I just highlighted makes arc CD, yeah? But there's no number right here, okay? So I can't write inside is half. So that one won't help me. But if I see this other arc that has 96, this one has an actual number on it, okay? And I can see that this arc, okay, is intercepted by this angle, okay? So now I can actually write that inside is half because we have the outside number, okay? So that relationship is that this number right here and this angle should be half of 96. It should be 96 divided by 2, and that is going to give me 48. Okay, so there would be 48 degrees right there. That's something I can do. All right, we're allowed to do that in this problem. All right, another thing that we could see is, that this line right here is going straight through the circle, okay? And in these problems, if a line looks like it's cutting the circle in half, then, it's cutting the circle in half, and especially here, it runs through that center. So that helps us because we know half of a circle is 180. Okay, so this problem would kind of be impossible to solve if we didn't make that observation. Okay, we need to see the circle gets cut in half, and that from here to here is 180 degrees. So now we have something that's kind of jumping out of this. We know that 180 plus 96 plus this little yellow part, this missing piece that we didn't know, would have to have a sum of 360. So there's lots of ways we could do this, right? We could use equations if we wanted, right? You could do it just numerically in your head and say, okay, well, this must be 360 minus 180 and then minus 96, okay? And if you do that in your head, you could solve it. Another way would be to take these three things that we put in these boxes and realize that they all have to have a sum of 360, all right? In this problem, I'm not sure that that's the better way, okay? But the second that we put algebraic expressions in there, you're going to need to solve it using an equation as opposed to just doing it in your head, okay? So in this problem, I think this one I would expect students to be able to do this in their head, okay? Because we could see since this half is 180, all right, we could see that this other half of the circle must also be 180, right? That whole thing also must have to be 180. So 180 minus 96 is 84, and that's what that piece has to be. But since that piece is 84, that now brings us to this step, where we realize this piece is 84, and now I can get the inside number because I have an outside one, okay? So outside is 84, but inside would be half of 84, and so we would have 42. So that last problem was supposed to be an example of how these problems become more complicated than just inside is half, outside is double. You have to kind of keep investigating. All right, so on this problem right here, we can see on number 4 that we have kind of a similar situation because we have the angle of 180 right here because this diameter cuts the circle in half. So in this case, we can see we want to get this outside number, but I can't get that outside number. And so, it could be tempting to try to, figure out the quickest way to solve a problem. And, you should always think about it. But the thing that I'm trying to give you guys in this list is that the inside is half, outside is double is going to help you figure out a lot of missing pieces, right? So since we have an inside number, our instinct should tell us, well, we got the inside, outside is double of the inside number, right? And so outside is double of 44, and that gives me 88 degrees. Okay, well now the realization we got to make is that this line cuts the circle in half. And therefore this whole arc must be equal to 180. So I know whatever this x is, that piece that we need to make, I know that x plus 88 has to make that 180, right? And so that tells me that x must be equal to 92, okay? You just take 88 from both sides. Okay, and you'll get an answer. So work through these problems like that. Again, I'm just trying to take you guys through the thought process. Okay, for inscribed angles, as I said, it's hard to give you an order because they always start so different. So you typically want to try to think, can I do it inside is half, outside is double, and go through the whole list of things that I put on the board and then start over again, right? So far, I see an inside number. I see this 117. So because I see an inside number, I could tell I probably am going to have to get an outside number. I'm going to at least check to see if that's the thing I have to do. And in this case, I see, well, this red angle intercepts this whole arc, JKL. All right, JKL is this arc right here that I just highlighted in red. And the 132 is only really giving us a piece, right? The 132 is telling us from there to there is 132, right? And so we don't know that other missing piece of JK. Well, actually we do, because this angle is 117. So what that tells me is this whole red angle, the whole red arc, actually has to be 2 times 117. All right? And 2 times 117 is equal to 234. So because that's 234 for that arc, that then tells me that I have a number that I could figure out for this one. Okay? Because these two pieces, right, 132 and x, they have to add up to 234 now. Right? So if we take 132 from both sides, okay, we can figure out what we're going to get for our final answer. In this case, we get 102. Okay, so in this case, how did this problem go? I mean, we could think about what we did. I had to do an outside is double, and then rather than doing anything with the whole circle being 360 or half a circle being 180, we made it to the invisible step 5 that I feel like I'm going to have to write on this video. Right, so in the next problem, I'm going to show you guys what I mean by step 5. Let's take a look at this one. Okay, so on this worksheet, I believe I made all of them multi-step problems. So if you want to watch a simpler video, I would not watch the Inscribed Angles practice video. I would probably watch just the Inscribed Angles video that starts with the introduction to this, right? In this case, we see that this line gives us half of the circle, so that means this whole arc must be 180. Okay, and I'm hoping that you could see that this side must be 110 then, right? Again, 110 plus 70 has to make 180 because we have an angle of 180 in the middle here, yeah? So, what does that mean? Well, how could I figure out what this angle has to be without realizing that it intercepts the arc of 110 degrees and seeing that it's an inscribed angle? So because, again, the vertex is right there on the circle, it's inscribed, and that means inside should be half of 110, and half of 110 is 55. All right, so at this point in the video, you're still watching, and if you're still practicing, I think the best way to do this would be to actually pause the problem before, work on it your own, and then go over so you can see exactly where your mistake was, if you did make a mistake, and then if it's not, you'll be able to know you did it perfectly, right? So please actually put in the practice right now, okay? We'll move on to number 7. Okay, on number 7, we see we got another similar situation to the last one, so seriously, pause the video, try to do this one on your own, and then, fast forward and see if you get to the part you need. All right, in this case, the first thing that I told you is always think inside is half, outside is double. Okay, if we start there, then we realize, okay, we got this 30 that intercepts arc QR, and so outside is double, so that should be 60. Okay? Well then, because this line cuts the circle in half, I know that this whole arc, right, those two have to add up to 180 degrees. So this missing piece has to be 120. Alright? So that's all good right there. Okay, this is the way you do this problem. Now, move on to number 8. And now we got things a little bit more complicated, so we could talk about the list of stuff. Alright, let's get back to the list. Alright, we said inside is. So, inside is half, outside is double, the whole circle is 360, and half a circle is 180, right? Well, where would we start right now? Think about it. What's your mind telling you right now, okay? The first thing we should realize is, well, we're kind of stuck right now. It looked like we can't do it inside is half. It does look that way, right? And it looks like we can't do it outside double. Whole circle is 360, half circle is 180. It looks like we can't do any of those. It kind of does. Maybe some of you guys can see the real thing. So, the last step. I mean, this is step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Now, I got to say, you don't necessarily have to do these in any kind of order, okay? But you have to repeat the cycle when you get to the end, okay? So the 5th thing that I'm going to put up here goes without saying, and some of my students laugh when I write this, okay? But I got to tell you, every now and then, you can get so caught up in doing that you forget to think, okay? And do not let that happen, especially on a test, okay? If you forget to think and you're just doing things, it's meaningless, okay? Make sure that you know you're right. What I mean by think in this case is that we should realize, okay, the only numbers that I have at all are over here. And they happen to be these two adjacent arcs, right? And by adjacent, I mean they're right next to each other. And so I could see if I added them up, okay, the whole arc, MLV, would be equal to 174 degrees. And then I could see the way that gets intercepted by this angle right here, okay? So, at this point, I actually don't need to do anything else with the red angle. We actually don't care about it anymore. But if I wanted to, I could write the inside as half. I just want to show you guys the way this works, okay? So right here would be half of 174, okay? And half of 174 is 87, right? But that doesn't help me at all, actually, in this case, okay? But for the sake of completion, when you're doing a problem like this, you kind of just want to do whatever you can. Unless you totally feel like an expert and you know what you're doing, and you're not even worried a little bit, you go ahead and do it your way, okay? But otherwise, I'm telling you, maybe just do whatever there is to do, okay? Now, it was a little bit of overkill because we should realize right now that the red and the blue make the whole circle. So what should go on this side is 186, right? Now 186 plus 174, that makes 360, okay? And so you can see I didn't really need to write the 87, okay? But in the cases where you're unsure what to do, just doing something that makes sense will, be helpful. All right, so now we know we got to get an inside number. And again, we have this blue angle that intercepted the blue arc of measure 186. So inside should be half of 186, and half of 186 is 93. So that will be the way we do this problem, okay? So as I was telling you, every now and then when you do these problems, you start at the top, you go down to the bottom of the list, and then when you get to the bottom, you actually go all the way back to the top and do it again, okay? And you don't stop until you really get the number that you had on your question mark, okay? Once you solve what the question's asking, then obviously you can stop. All right, so number 8. Let's take a look at number 9 now, okay? This one, I think I could see the way to get this one done already, right? All right, I'm telling you, the way that I'm thinking about this is I want to always get a one-step problem, right? I want to get the question mark and get this done as soon as possible. So first thing I should recognize, well, if I want to get the question mark, I'll need to get this thing out here, all right? Or, because this is a triangle, right, the only other possibility would be that I would need to find this angle right here, and then I would know the 3 of these all have to add up to 180, right? So a lot of times in geometry or with circles, there's more than one way to do something, all right? But in this problem, what we really want to do is notice that this blue angle over here, all right, intercepts arc FH. Okay, and this arc right here at FH, okay, must be equal to double of 65. So 2 times 65, okay, what goes here? 130 degrees. All right, well, now what do we know about a whole circle, though? Because we should realize, well, wait a minute. 130 plus 130, and this red piece have to make the whole 360. But 130 plus 130 is already 260 degrees. So think about it, right? What do I know about this value right here? What would I know about that x? Well, I know it has to add up with 130 to make 360, right? I know, just to put this into some kind of symbols, I know that this is true. Okay? So obviously in this case, x is 100. Okay? But inside is half. So inside here, we would have to put half of 100. And half of 100, and again, the reason why I could do that is because, like we said earlier, this angle intercepts the red arc. Okay? So inside is half of 100, and that will be 50. Alright, so it can be tough to do these problems if you don't know what you're talking about. And that's one thing that these problems will expose. Alright, at some point, if you're totally confused, it's going to show. So, just slow it down and go one at a time. If you use highlighters, pens, colored pencils, anything to try to make sure that you guys can see stuff. Alright, because I know this topic has a tendency to make people even a little dizzy. Alright, because you got to think in a circle. So, we have 140 and we have 104. Okay, and we should see straight away that, hey, if I could find this outside number, then I would be able to find my question mark in one step. And to be able to find this number, I'll have to add up these three things, right? We know that 140 plus 104 plus x plus whatever that is, has to equal 360. All right, and then if we just do the math, however we want to do it. We could do 44 plus x equals 360. All right, and then just keep doing the algebra. Right? Take 244 from both sides, and we get x equals 116. Okay, so that's just what goes here. All right, that's not our question mark. Okay, but we remembered what we were talking about, right? Okay, that the inside has to be half of 116, and so inside should be 58. All right? So there's number 10. All right? I'll be sure to put the answers on at the end of this video, okay? So you guys can see all of them. All right, and on the back, it looks like we're getting to the point where, you know, you guys got to do a little bit of practice on your own. So for 11, 12, 13, 14, I would say, you know, work out those. And the answers, I'll put right here. This video is 23 minutes long. I feel like I could maybe do one more example. And then after that, it's going to run so long that some people might be allergic to clicking on it. So, again, there's your answers, okay? If you're watching this video, use these to help you figure out if you're right. All right, I think the last one that I will do is number 12. That one looks kind of complicated, maybe more complicated than the others. All right, so on this one, I know I want to get this piece, right? And I can see that I don't have any angle that intercepts it, right? I can see that this point goes over here, and this point goes over here, right? So since, you know, D and J aren't making the angle, we can't get this done in one step. So we have to keep thinking. Okay, so what do we know? Inside is half, outside is double. Okay, so let's think of inside is half. All right, well, we don't have an inside, any outside numbers to help us get inside, really. Like this 140 right here, again, the same thing happened. Look, this point and this point don't go back to the same place, right? This one goes back to L, and this goes to D. So that's not going to be an inscribed angle that intercepts that arc. All right, so we can't do that either. All right, so what can we do? All right, well, what you guys should see right now is that this angle that's 116, I mean, that's the number that we have. Okay, so that would actually be the number that's going to save us right now, because that tells us this whole yellow arc must be double of 116. So we're going to use these yellow lines to go out here. Okay, and then maybe now I'll actually put some blue on top of that, just for the sake of, I'm sure you guys can see this on your phones or however you're watching this. Alright, this whole arc, the whole blue arc, is equal to 232. Alright, 232. So we got something, right? We did an outside is double. And the reason why we did that, we might not even know why we did that, okay? And that's why I'm telling you guys to just go through the list and keep thinking, because every now and then, you don't know what you're doing at first, okay? In this case right now, we are stuck on a step 5, okay? We can't do outside is double anything. We are stuck on a think step. This is where you got to think, okay? I don't want to break this down too much, okay? But what you guys should be able to see is that if we think really hard, we say, well, the whole thing is 232. That's the whole thing. And I know this part is 140. So these two numbers, whatever they are, they got to add to 232, right? So that means that x would then be 232 minus 140, okay? And so that tells us that this side right here, this x, must be 92, okay? 92 plus 140 make 232, so that gives us the whole side, okay? But, you know, in this case we're done. So like I said, we don't always know what we're doing. We're not totally sure, like, hey, is this going to lead where we're going? Because there's going to be missing pieces. So sometimes something that looks inaccessible will now become something solvable, right? So you just kind of have to move. It's like a domino effect, all right? So, as I said, this worksheet, I mean, this last one, number 14, I feel like is a great example because it kind of at least, this one is a pretty straightforward example, right? You look at the angle that's inscribed, okay, now think about what would be happening in your brain, right? The first thing should be that you're realizing, okay, I want to find this piece, okay? And we know outside is double. So that means I would be able to write this if I had an angle out here somewhere, but I don't have any inscribed angles that make that arc, okay? So the only other thing that I could use would maybe be like a 360 or a 180, and I don't have any of that either. So that tells me that I should have started at the top of the list where we say inside is half, and outside is double. And because I have this outside number, I'm going to go ahead and do it. Outside is double. So double of 82 is 164. And now that's actually the trick to the whole problem, because it becomes, I think, a little more obvious now that what we have is that these three arcs all have to make 360. And so when you do the math, all right, you know, basically we have this equation that you can write, that x plus 105 plus 164 is equal to 360 degrees, okay? And then you just solve that. And if you solve it correctly, the answers would be 91. Alright, so I'm going to call this video here. And good luck to you guys. Again, I'll put the answers right there. If you guys need a more basic inscribed angles, then this was not the video. Okay, again, watch the introduction to inscribed angles, and that one will have the more basic examples. All right, come back to this video when you're ready to practice the multi-step. Good luck.